In this video, we will consider functions as graphs and learn how to check if a given equation in x represents a function of x. You have learned that a function is a mathematical rule that takes an input value and produces exactly one output value according to the rule. Functions are expressed in this way. If we call the output y, we may express functions as equations too. Here is a question for you. Are all equations containing x functions of x? For example, you know that y equals x squared is a function of x. How about y squared equals x? Is it a function of x? One way to check is by first sketching its graph and then applying the vertical line test. What is the vertical line test? Let's understand the vertical line test using the equation y equals x squared, which we already know is a function of x. Sketch the graph of y against x. This function takes an x value, squares it, and produces exactly one y value. Graphically, this means that, for example, if x equals a, then y equals a squared, and if x equals b, y equals b squared. In other words, we can say that the vertical lines x equals a and x equals b each cut the graph exactly once. Can you see that in fact all vertical lines cut the graph exactly once? However, it is not possible to draw all vertical lines. So we use a general line x equals k and say that any vertical line x equals k cuts the graph exactly once. So y equals x squared is a function of x. Is y equals 2 a function of x? Let's use the vertical line test to find out. First, we sketch this graph. Let's draw some vertical lines. Can you see that all these lines cut the graph exactly once? In fact, any vertical line x equals k cuts the graph exactly once. So y equals 2 is indeed a function of x. Do you think that y squared equals x is a function of x? Let's use the vertical line test to check. First, we sketch this graph. The graph starts from x equals 0, so we do not consider vertical lines before that. Now, you can see that x equals 0 cuts the graph only once. However, there are many other lines that cut the graph twice. For example, x equals 2 cuts the graph twice. So y squared equals x is not a function of x. You can also tell from the rule that if the input x is 2, then the output y can be either square root 2 or negative square root 2. One input value gives two output values, so this is not a function. Test yourself. Do these equations in x represent functions of x? Pause the video to try. When you are ready, continue with the video. Let's check your answers. The graph of y equals square root of x looks like this. Note that the graph starts from x equals 0, so we do not consider negative values of x. Try some vertical lines. Can you see that they all cut the graph exactly once? Since any vertical line x equals k cuts the graph exactly once, y equals square root of x is a function of x. This is the graph of x equals 2, and the only vertical line we need to consider is x equals 2. Can you see how many intersection points there are? There are infinitely many intersection points. Since the vertical line x equals 2 cuts the graph more than once, the equation x equals 2 is not a function of x. Did you realize that for this equation, the input x value is 2, and the output can be many different y values? Let's summarize what you have learned. Given any equation, in order to determine if it represents a function of x, you can sketch its graph and use the vertical line test to check. If any vertical line x equals k cuts the graph exactly once, then the equation represents a function of x. If there is a vertical line that cuts the graph more than once, then this equation does not represent a function of x.